latest session of the BC Legislature is over with, and our MLAs are generally back out in the hinterland visiting with their constituents. And there's no shortage of things to talk about. Welcome to FaceTime. I'm Dan MacLennan. Today's guest, North Island MLA Claire Trevena, back in the studio.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Dan.
Our first repeat guest. That's a privilege.
I appreciate it, and there are a lot of things to talk about, so I'm not sure we're going to fit it all in half an hour this time.
Well, we'll get in what we can, and really recent in the news was the blockade up at Northern Pressure Treated Wood on Duncan Bay Road. This is a municipal issue, and yet it seems to perhaps be spilling into the provincial arena, or at least has the potential of doing so. You've written a letter to Community Minister Ida Chong inviting her, requesting that she appoint a mediator in this dispute. What led you to go to that length? Because normally the two don't necessarily meet, provincial politics and municipal politics.
I went to, at the request of the residents, I went to meet with them up Duncan Bay Road and just talk about the problems that they're facing. This was a couple of months ago, and see literally what it is that they are living with and listen to what they're living with. Had a very good conversation with them and promised that I would try to do something. Obviously they knew, and I hadn't got involved in the past because it is a municipal issue, it is a local issue, but they were very concerned, and I felt, you know, it's a duty to go and hear some of their concerns. As a result of that, I talked, when the legislature was still sitting, I met with both the Environment Minister, Terry Lake, and the Minister for Community Development, Ida Chong, and said, I know this is a municipal issue, but isn't there something that we can do? How can we solve this? Because we do need to help people. We need to make sure that the company can do its business, but these are residents whose lives are being made very uncomfortable at the moment. What can we do? And at the time, both ministers said, it's a municipal issue, take it back to the council. And I knew that the council was looking at possibilities, looking at alternatives, but it seemed to just go on and on and on. Had many conversations, many emails, much correspondence from the residents there. And that's when I decided it was time to go back to the Minister of Community Affairs and see if there was not anything that she could do, just to try to push this along, if they can get a mediator, just to try to find some resolution. Have
you heard anything back?
Haven't heard anything back yet. We only sent the letter earlier this week. So in government terms, that's very, very recent. But I'm hoping that with the profile that this has been getting, and the residents have raised the profile of this and have made it very much a concern that people are aware of, that the Minister will see whether she can talk to the council, whether she can in any way bring some sort of independent person here who can maybe try to find some resolution.
Is that argument perhaps, or the argument for provincial involvement, perhaps a little bit stronger, given that there's so many complexities in this story, but one is that the plant is on municipal property, the residents right next door are in regional district property, there's jurisdictions, there's different levels of government at play already.
There are different levels of government at play already, that's no question, and that's one of the problems. It's, you know, is it the regional district or is it the city? Who's got responsibility? And you know, is it the ministry, because we have a ministry for the community affairs, so that would be the natural fit. Likewise, we have the concept of different levels of pollution and different sorts of pollution. So is sound pollution issue, would that be a municipal issue or would that be an environmental issue, which is why initially I went to Minister Lake to try and get him engaged in this. I think that one of the problems is that everybody is obviously so close to this. In the city, there are things that have happened, decisions that have been made that people are very close to. Likewise, I mean, the regional district's got responsibility for the residents who are living there. The temperatures inflame quickly. So if we can bring in somebody who can maybe just try and look at things very objectively and try and find a solution. And I'll be honest, I don't know what that solution is. We have an operation that is there, that is working, that is has a business to carry out. and has the right given to them by the city to carry out its business in that location. We have residents who have been living for many years in that location very peaceably without their lives being disturbed by having a very noisy industry next to them. It's a very complex issue, so maybe whether the solution is to find a different location for the plant that they could be moved to, maybe some of the noise abatement that is going to be happening, maybe it will work. But I do think that there is a real need now to get some independent, an independent mediator who can just look at it very dispassionately, isn't living in Campbell River, isn't involved in this, and can look at this very dispassionately and get the best solution for both sides.
Doesn't have direct ties to either the city or the regional district.
Or the business, or the residents is just coming in quite quite independently, and that's why I hope that the minister will be able to get involved in this.
Is there any sort of precedent that you can fall back on and say, well, look, you appointed a mediator here, or anything like that?
I haven't seen a precedent in something like this. Usually the government does try to, the provincial government does try to allow municipalities to solve their own affairs. That being said, if you can't find a resolution, maybe the time is to set the precedent, to say we've got to find a different way of dealing with this. I don't think that Campbell River, with its regional district and the city, is going to be alone in this. I'm sure there have been other instances where you have that sort of overlap of jurisdiction. But it's as much as anything, just let's try and see where we can get somebody independent saying, this is a possible solution. How will this work for you?
The understatement of the week might have come from Campbell River RCMP Staff Sergeant Troy Beauregard at the blockade, saying there are some gray areas here. And it appears when you have this overlap of regional district and the city, and yes, the province wants to stay back, but it's also the province that lays out how these local governments behave under the community charter, and there are rules to be followed. So really you can't entirely separate.
You can't. The province, while it doesn't have a role directly, and say when the residents first came to me, it's like this is clearly it's a local matter. The issues that are being dealt with are very local issues. But yes, the province does have a responsibility. It has established the community charter. Cities and regional districts have to abide by certain rules, certain regulations that's set down by the province. They get a lot of responsibility devolved to them, and that's why the province turns around and says, it's not our responsibility. We've given that power to the regional district, we've given that power to the city, it's up to them to sort it out. But when you can't sort it out, when you've got many grey areas, I think the next level of government has a responsibility to get involved.
Long and the short of it, what can a mediator hurt?
What can a mediator hurt? I think that we're not seeing anything move as is. We are getting to a level of frustration which is very unfortunate. There doesn't seem to be any movement from anyone, so let's try bringing in a mediator and see what we can get to. Speaking
of issues where mediators don't always work, the teachers and the government appear to have come to a tentative agreement at this point in time, which is historic in itself in recent times, given that settlements have not been at all the order of the day.
The government has settled with the teachers a few times, and I think it's often unnaturally difficult. I don't know why, because the teachers have certain things that they want, the government has certain things they want. We're all looking out for the best for our children. So, but it's not every time of negotiations failed, but.
So now we have what is apparently a tentative deal that offers the teachers virtually nothing. Mm-hmm. That the teachers may or may not reject, but the hierarchy is recommending acceptance. In part, it seems because, well, we'll be back in contract negotiations in roughly a year's time anyway. Do you get the feel that maybe part of the strategy here was, well, let's just try our luck with an NDP government?
I honestly don't know. That is, it's speculating on everybody's behalf if that's the case. I would hope that they have actually come to some agreement there, that they feel comfortable enough to recommend to their members. Otherwise, why go this route? Otherwise, if it, as you're suggesting, I've got to say it's a very cynical waste of everybody's time. I would hope that everybody has gone to the table with best interests of the teachers for their members and for the students and for the employers, again for the government and for the students. I think that you've got to look at this in the best light possible. I think that people may want to move on, and it is then up to the teachers' executive is recommending acceptance of the negotiated agreement. It is in the end up to teachers voting at the end of the month, at the end of June, to decide whether they think that it's worthwhile. Whether, as you suggest, that maybe they let's just hold on and see what we can get next year, or say, no, it's not good enough, we really want to go ahead and push to get something better. But I would hope that when people go into mediation, no matter how concerned we are about the mediation, and I think that it's no secret that we as the opposition were very concerned about the mediation, about the mediator, we're obviously very pleased to see that it has created what we hope to be a resolution, and it's now up to individual teachers to decide whether they're going to accept it or not.
Given how bitter this was and how long it went, were you surprised when all of a sudden we heard, oh, well, there's a settlement?
I think most people were surprised. I've got to say, as a legislature, we were expecting that we would be going back to Victoria sometime this summer to talk about what was going to be next for the teachers if they hadn't accepted this. And as I say, as we do this interview, we don't know whether the teachers will or won't accept it. But yes, I think everybody's surprised. It's very long, very bitter. There was a bad feeling about the mediator. So great news for everyone that that it's been accepted, and now maybe it's time to really get some answers and move on.
Now, I am used to getting an endless stream of mail from your federal counterpart telling me how wonderful things are going in Ottawa and across this country. There's always something there, but I don't get mail from you very often. And of course, I got one of these the other day in the mail. It's the first I've seen from you in quite a while, and the first thing I thought, cynical me, was, oh, there's an election coming. Now, is that unfair of me to say that, well, we've got to start getting the ducks in a row and it's time to increase the profile? I
would think it's pretty cynical, yes. I have done a series of leaflets over the 7 years that I've been the MLA, putting out information about issues of concern, about different aspects of what's been happening in the legislature, in the constituency. This one, it was about what happened in the legislature at the last session.
Right.
I mean, I have to say that maybe the format isn't the best to put that out like a newsletter, but it is very much, this is what I was saying in the legislature on these issues. It's a summary for people who, I put out, when I'm in the legislature, I put out a weekly email for people who want that. People can find it on my website. So I'm often in contact with constituents in different ways. These sort of household flyers are quite expensive to put out, so we are judicious with them, but I thought it was very important to put it out at the end of the session to say, this is what we've been talking about all this time in Victoria, particularly for those people who don't get my newsletter and don't check my website. It gives the direct contact. Here I am in your mailbox now. I'm not in your computer inbox. I'm not on a website. I'm not tweeting or Facebooking or anything else. You get something in your mailbox.
Well, I hope you don't have anything against Facebook now.
I have many Facebook friends and 2 Facebook pages. So anybody can friend me on Facebook. I'd look forward to it.
Good. I see in here the Coastal Ferry Act was amended as one of the topics. BC Ferries has been quite prominent in the news this year as ridership continues to plummet, losses continue to mount, and everybody's got an opinion. So, of course, our intrepid FaceTime streeter team went back out onto the street to find out a good summer question. What do you think of BC Ferries? Have you got any suggestions?
BC Ferries is my transportation to work every single day and home every single night. it's a necessity. It's part of the highway system. And I think it should be put back into the highway system.
They could go back to considering the ferries as part of the highways. I live on Denman Island and it costs an arm and a leg to come across.
My children don't even like the fact that I live here because it's costing them so much just to come and visit us. That's about the only thing I have to say.
What do you suggest the government do?
Lower the prices? I don't know. I really don't know. Spend less money on the government, on themselves, paying their own wages, and maybe spend a little bit more on the taxpayers and helping us.
My number one thing would be student rates, because they offer seniors rates, and when I was going to school, you know, I came back to the island for Thanksgiving and whatnot, and it was just way too expensive, and you know, being a student. So that would be my absolute number one suggestion, is if they can do seniors rates, they can too. So
I go to Vancouver a lot less than I used to because the ferry cost is so high, and I think we're losing a lot of tourist dollars because it's not affordable, and I would like to see better value for our money.
Ferries build a beautiful downtown office in Victoria. Downtown, prime real estate, when they could have had the office at the ferry terminal. So I think it's wrong planning, wrong management, and hopefully one day we'll get a good team in there. That's all we can hope for, because what else can you and I do?
The ferry's a good service, it transports everybody, but the service is not very good. It's slow. People are stuck waiting. Nobody wants to wait hours for a ferry. I don't know if they can get more ferries to start transporting people. The Fast Cat was a terrible idea. It costs more money to even come up with those. But definitely we need more ferries, more service, faster service, because it's dampering the usage of the ferries, yes.
I think there's been a real big improvement in the service and the quality of the ferries, and all you got to do is go outside of the country and find out what it really costs for a ferry, so I have no complaints at all.
Well, at some point I guess we're looking at that inevitable land bridge. Costs are going up. I travel over a couple times a month, $68 each way. Sometimes I drive to Nanaimo and take the plane across, it's $140. So it just depends how much driving you have to do in Vancouver, but I certainly use the ferries less than I used to because costs are getting quite high.
We're lucky we just got the darn things, and I guess we're just going to have to lose money whether we like it or not, because it is part of being in BC. You gotta love it. Saskatchewan, they got other complaints, I don't know what, but not ferries. No, I think it's fantastic service. It's just too bad they're tight on the budget.
A lot of ferry trouble in Saskatchewan. There's a shocker for you. Now, from the NDP, we have heard time and time and time again, the solution is to put ferries back into highways jurisdiction. They're part of our coastal marine highway, and that's where we should be. Is there anything else you can add to that? That seems to be, you've been pretty much on message, consistent with that for years.
Well, listening to the people who are ferry users, and I think that we've got to remember it's not just people who live either on Quadra or Denman, as some of the people interviewed do. It's the people who live here in Campbell River. As long as we're on this island, we are ferry dependent. And we have to recognize that ferries are part of our life, and they should be affordable and accessible, and they're not at the moment. The way to make them affordable and accessible is integrating them into the highway system again. Nobody quibbles about the very good state of the road in the Peace Country. And I've actually challenged the Minister of Transportation on this. He's got great highways.
He's from the Peace Country, yes.
He's from the Peace Country, great paved highways. And yet we in BC, which is reliant on a marine highway, we are expected to pay every time for our highways. They're not expected to pay a toll for their highways, yet we're expected to pay severely for our highways. And I don't think anybody's saying that our ferries should be free. There's no way we're saying that. but they should be affordable. I mean, the ferry commissioner himself, when he did his big report earlier this year, consulted widely, came up here, went around coastal communities, got a very clear message from people who live in coastal communities. They are unaffordable. We cannot afford to live in these communities, whether it is on Quadra or Cortez or up Island or down Denman and Hornby, or whether it is expecting your family to visit, or whether it's expecting your school sports team to get across, or you're a student who actually might want to come home, as one of your interviewees suggested. It has reached tipping point. He made it very clearly, the cost has reached tipping point. And I think what we've seen in the last few months, the reports on the usage of ferries compared to the cost, it's quite right, they've reached tipping point. In the Coastal Ferries Amendment Act, this was not addressed. It's a severe problem. The fact that people cannot afford to use their highway anymore was not addressed.
BC Ferries indeed seems to be saying, oh, the turnaround is coming. We've just sort of bottomed out and things are going to get better, although the ferries advisory committees and whatnot do not appear to hold much faith there.
The turnaround, it'd be nice for it to be coming, but it's at the cost of people who rely on the ferries. The costs keep on going up. We're like, the 4% increases. You look at the ticket, it's still got a fuel surcharge on it. It really is unaffordable. If you live on Quadra and you need to bring your car to Campbell River every day for your work, you're paying approximately $400 a month to get to work. It's outrageous. I mean,
student rates, as we heard suggested.
Very, very interesting idea. It's something that we get rates for students up to grade 12. That if they're traveling because of school, if they're traveling because of their studies, that's covered. Seniors after the age of 65, you don't have to pay Monday to Thursday. Looking at a student rate to encourage ridership might be a very good idea. But I think what we have to look at is not just the specific group, not just the interest groups, but for everybody. We've got to ensure that those fares are frozen and we start to roll them back. Otherwise, we are going to see the death of coastal communities. And as I say, it's not just the islands. We're going to see more and more problems on this island as people just decide not to come here or not to move here because they simply cannot afford it.
Now, the last time you were on the show, we talked about the BC Jobs Plan pilot project for Campbell River. The conference, a big show held in late January. And the question was, when is the follow-up going to be? You seem to question the accomplishments of whether or not anything was going on. Then we heard from the minister, well, we've been busy, but early June we should be back to Campbell River. We should be doing the big follow-up. We should be getting things out there. Well, early June has obviously come and gone. What is your understanding of where the BC Jobs Plan pilot project Campbell River stands?
I think that within Campbell River there is still a lot of hard work being done to create jobs and create employment and to attract industry here. I think that River Corps and the Chamber and others are working very hard at that. We're very lucky that we're going to have the anchor, hopefully, of the John Hart Dam upgrading and the building of the hospitals, which is going to help the economy a lot. And there's a lot of work being done within this community to attract and create jobs. I think that the jobs plan, as brought by the minister, is not providing that stimulus. We're not seeing any jobs coming through that. We're not even seeing a follow-up conference. I had a meeting with the minister at which point he was saying very clearly, oh yes, by early July we're going to be back in Campbell River. In fact, I was in touch with his office today asking specifically that, when are we going to see him? Because the other thing is people's calendars get full. We can't everybody clear off everything we're doing, because suddenly it's, that the minister may have found a spare afternoon to come to Campbell River. And if that's the priority he's putting on it, I think it reflects on what the jobs plan really is, which is a lot of pre-election propaganda, got to say. I mean, it was very clear in the meeting back in January. It was, we want achievable short-term achievables. We want jobs quickly. We want jobs in the next 18 months, which obviously runs into the election cycle. We all want jobs here. We absolutely want jobs, but we want sustainable jobs. We don't want jobs that are just photo op jobs. We want to make sure that we are creating a strong economy for Campbell River and the North Island, and a resilient economy. And it's not coming through photo ops from the Minister of Jobs and Tourism.
Is there some way this process can be salvaged that can show some results that you would be satisfied with?
Oh, absolutely. But I think that it's the process that's been going on for many years and has been really honed in through Rivercorps, through the Chamber, through the work of some groups in the city that are working to create jobs, and with the added bonus, I would say it's a bonus, of BC Hydro's plans and the hospital build. Those are going to help the community, no doubt. We've got good construction projects happening, will help the community and will help attract jobs, bring people here. But I think that the work is already being done, and the credit should not go to the government for this. It should go to the people of Campbell River who've been working for many years making sure this happens.
You mentioned the hospital build. We've got this 1-2 punch of the John Hart Generating Station, which we assume is going ahead, and the hospital build, which we're even more sure, I think, is going ahead. Both will be happening at the same time. Both should be very good for the economy in terms of economic stimulus. Have you heard or have you got any outstanding concerns regarding the hospitals project? We're just at the point now where they're starting to roll out the open houses, and here's what it's going to look like.
My prime concern with the hospital project is not that it's not going to go ahead, but it's the format that it's going ahead. The fact that the government and the health authority are committed to having the public-private partnership.
The P3.
The P3, which is the most expensive way of building. It is not good for building a facility such as a hospital. It's expensive because you're financing it through the private sector, not the government paying for it, but the private sector paying for it. But the government still has to pay the private sector. The government doesn't get off the hook. It's not the private sector paying for it. The government will still pay for it. People of BC will still pay for it. They'll just pay for it for a very long time, for 30 years, and then still have to be carrying it after that. So we've got a really very expensive way of paying for it. And the fact that when we're talking about hospitals, it's not like building a bridge where you build it and you just drive across it. A hospital, things change. We already know how out of date our hospital is in 50 years. It's been out of date for a number of years. So this hospital is being built by the private sector with, we as the people of BC will be paying for it for 30 years. We'll be paying the private sector for 30 years. And the private sector will maintain it and look after it up until that point. The last 20 years of its life, it comes back to us as the people of BC. The last 20 years of a building's life is when it tends to be deteriorating the most. The changes in technology and expectation and delivery will have changed a lot. So we are then paying for basically a white elephant. We are stuck with a project that just really, or rather a building that is not cost efficient and not people efficient.
So we've got open houses coming up. We'll be hearing more. We'll be seeing more of the nuts and bolts.
I hope we'll be seeing more of the nuts and bolts, but the problem is that the present government, the Liberal government, has said very clearly that a government project over a certain size is going to be over $20 million. It's going to be a public-private partnership. That's it. No ifs, no buts. And I think there should be ifs, no buts. I think that people should be questioning the way that we're financing this, because this is a public resource. It isn't a private sector resource. It is something that we should be looking at, how we're going to finance it, how we're going to make sure that there are public sector jobs there, and how it's going to really serve the people of the North Island, not the private sector.
And obviously we'll still be talking about this the next time you come back on the show, but unfortunately we've run out of time for today.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks for joining us. My guest has been North Island MLA Claire Trevena. Happy Canada Day. Happy Canada Day to all. And of course, a little bit of business. We'd like to hear what you think of the show, and or who you'd like to see on the show. And here's how. You can like us and comment on Facebook at www.facebook.com/FaceTime4U. That's for the number 4. You can email us at face-time@shaw.ca, and you can always leave comments for us on YouTube as well. And so ends show number 12. I'm Dan MacLennan. Thanks for sharing some FaceTime.